The 4% rule, as we know it, has changed, and this is according to the father of the 4% rule, William Bengen, who recently revised his study and found that we can safely withdraw more than 4% of our portfolios each year, still without a significant chance of running out of money in retirement. So in this video, I'm going to explain why he increased the 4% rule to a higher number, as well as a few surprising facts about the 4% rule that you may not have known, just to make sure that you're doing everything correctly if you do use this for your own retirement plan and making adjustments if appropriate. By the way, if we haven't met yet, my name is Jake Skellhorn. I'm a certified financial planner. I own Spark Wealth Advisors with my partner Chris, where we help people retire with confidence and clarity. Consider subscribing to the channel. I typically post about 2 to 3 times per week on retirement-related topics. Leave a question below in the comments if you have any, and share this with a friend if they could find it helpful. Before we get started, just my candid view of the 4% rule. I think it's a great rule of thumb to start with when it comes to your retirement plan. If you have no idea where you stand as far as how much you're going to need to save up or how much you're able to spend based on what you've already saved, it's a good place to get a baseline of how much you can afford to spend in retirement. But I don't think it's something that you should focus your entire plan around for a few different reasons. I'll share in more detail at the end of the video, but the main reasons are that the 4% rule assumes that you're going to spend the same exact amount each year adjusted for inflation, when there's plenty of studies out there that show that retirees spend money a little bit differently than that. And the other thing is that the 4% rule, in most cases, you reach the end of your life with more money than you started with. So to get the most out of your money, obviously you don't want to be dying with more than you started retirement with. So again, towards the end of the video, I'll share some alternatives that I believe are a little bit better than the 4% rule. But if you do use the 4% rule, again, I just wanted to share some updates to it from the rule's creator himself. So the first fact about the 4% rule that a lot of people aren't aware of is that the 4% rule doesn't take into consideration investment expenses or taxes. So if you have $1 million saved up for retirement and you're getting ready to retire thinking you can spend $40,000 per year, after investment expenses and taxes, that $40,000 could very well look closer to $30,000. So the 4% rule assumes that you're paying for taxes and any investment expenses like your mutual funds or ETFs after that $40,000 is taken out in that example. The second thing, and it's related to the first fact, is that the 4% rule assumes that you have 100% of your investments in an IRA. So it does not factor in money that you might have in a Roth IRA or a brokerage account. So if you have a significant level of assets built up in a brokerage account that is paying interest and dividends, you're paying taxes on those interest and dividends anyway. So that's usually money that you'll pull out first. Then you may not even have to withdraw 4% of your portfolio based on what your income needs are. So again, that's another assumption that a lot of people aren't aware of, is that it assumes all of your money is in a traditional IRA where you pay taxes when you withdraw that money. The third thing about the 4% rule is that it's based on a specific allocation to stocks in your portfolio. Initially, William Bengen said that anywhere between 50 and 75% of your portfolio should be allocated to stocks and the rest in intermediate bonds. But later, he revised his study and said that about 63% would be the optimal allocation to stocks and the rest in bonds. So he did revise that and found that that's the more optimal allocation to support the 4% rule over time. One of the issues I have with the 4% rule is that it assumes you're only invested in 2 different assets. It would be the S&P 500 for your stocks, which is only US large cap stocks, and intermediate US Treasury bonds for the bond portion. So the latest revision that William Bengen made to the rule was to include other asset classes such as international stocks and small and micro cap stocks. And this actually leads to the next fact, which is the increase in withdrawal rate that he found by including those other asset classes. So by including small cap stocks into his portfolio for the scenario that he ran, he found that the expected returns were higher. So historically, small cap stocks have done better than US large cap stocks. So while there was more volatility in that type of portfolio, he found that the 4% rule could actually be increased to the 4.7% rule. So because of these increased returns by adding other asset classes, it supported a higher withdrawal rate from the portfolio long term. Another thing a lot of people aren't aware of with the 4% rule is that it's based on a 30-year retirement time frame. So if you retire at 60, the rule is expecting you to live until age 90. So if you retire early and you have a 40-year time frame, or if you retire later, or maybe you don't have as long of a life expectancy due to health issues, the 4% rule needs to be adjusted accordingly. So you may want to lower your withdrawal rate if you plan to retire earlier, and you may be able to afford a higher withdrawal rate if you, again, retire later or have a lower life expectancy. So just to recap a couple key points so far, make sure that you're factoring taxes into your withdrawal plan in retirement if you are using the 4% rule. Make sure that you are receiving what you need to spend after taxes with that 4% withdrawal. Also remember, it's centered around a 30-year retirement time frame, so if you plan to retire earlier than that, make sure you're making adjustments accordingly. And of course, the 4% rule is now the 4.7% rule based on those other asset classes. If you add them to your portfolio, you can expect to withdraw a higher amount than that long term. So as a financial planner, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I do like the 4% rule as a starting point to give you an idea of how much you can spend or afford to spend in retirement. But for my clients, I prefer to use a more dynamic withdrawal strategy that's more realistic based on how retirees actually spend money. If you've seen any of my videos, you've probably heard me talk about the retirement spending smile, which basically says that retirees spend more money in their initial years of retirement when they have the physical and mental health to do so, to travel more, to spend more time with family, whatever it might be. After those go-go years come these slow-go years where you kind of settle down, you're aging a little bit, can't really travel as much as you would like to or used to be able to. So you start to actually spend less in those initial years. And then towards the end, with healthcare expenses and things like that, towards the end of our lives, spending tends to increase. So rather than spending money in a linear fashion like the 4% rule assumes, we do adjust spending throughout these different phases of retirement. In addition to the retirement spending smile, we also implement a withdrawal strategy that's called Guardrails. Some of you might be familiar with. Guardrails essentially allows you to start an initial withdrawal rate much higher than 4%. Usually it's around 5% or higher. In exchange for that, you have to be flexible in terms of increasing or potentially cutting spending temporarily based on how the market's doing and how your portfolio is doing. So by having a rules-based withdrawal strategy, it allows for a lot more spending typically over your retirement. It allows you to not die with more than you started with, which is obviously not a goal that many of us have unless you plan to leave a legacy. But again, with that guardrail strategy, just like the retirement spending smile, it allows you to spend more of your money in those early years of retirement when you can enjoy it the most. So if you are someone who uses the 4% rule, I hope this video was helpful to implement those changes based on William Bengen's revisions to his study. If you're looking for maybe a more personalized withdrawal strategy that takes into consideration taxes, Social Security, and your true goals in retirement, feel free to reach out to us at sparkwealthadvisors.com at the link in the description below. And thanks for watching.